tucked away in the Appalachian mountains. The oil lamp on the dresser flickered, casting shadows across the low ceiling of the cabin. The moonlit reflections danced against the window pane, out into the night where the wind howled through the trees. 9-year-old Toby bolted upright in his narrow bed, the scratchy quilt clutched to his chin. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He didn't need to look at the dresser to know they were there. He could feel the weight of them from his guilty conscience. 2 heavy silver $50 catching the faint amber glow from the flickering fireplace in his room. Earlier that Tuesday, down the holler at the Spencer's place, the silence had been heavy enough to cut with a knife. Old man Silas laid in his pine box casket, built by his own rough hands before the lung rot finally carried him off. Following the old Appalachian custom, silver coins had been placed over the dead man's eyes, not just to keep the lids shut tight, but for the dead to pay the toll for crossing over the dark river. Toby had watched from the shadows of the porch while the grown-ups were out back. Everyone knew the rule: what's left with the dead stays with the dead. Robbing a corpse was to invite an angry spirit straight to your doorstep, bringing a curse that could wither a family's corn crop or dry up their well for a generation. Yet the silver had winked at him, and the poverty of the eastern Kentucky hills, where a shiny coin was rarer than a clear weather winter, those 2 $50 represented a fortune. They could buy salt, flour, and maybe even a brand new pair of boots for the coming winter. Impulsively, his heart in his throat, Toby had slipped into the parlor, while the mourners were gathered in the kitchen for funeral cake. He went to the casket, reached out, his small fingers trembling, and lifted the heavy coins from Silas's cold, waxy eyelids. He pocketed them before anyone could turn around, sliding away into the thickets like a fox. Now, in his bed at night, the room grew unnaturally cold. The comforting smell of wood smoke was suddenly replaced by a metallic tang of damp earth, crushed peppermint, the kind used to freshen the parlor during a wake, and the unmistakable scent of old wool soaked in mountain rain. The floorboards just outside Toby's bedroom door groaned under a slow, heavy weight. There were no footsteps, just a steady, deliberate pressure moving across the wood. Toby squeezed his eyes shut so hard, amber lights danced behind his eyelids. He pulled the quilt over his head, biting down on his knuckle to keep from crying out. The sound came from the top of the dresser. It was the sharp ring of heavy silver striking the pine wood. The air in the room grew thick. It became hard to breathe. Through a tiny gap in the quilt, Toby forced himself to look. Standing beside the dresser was a tall, emaciated silhouette. It wore the familiar shapeless suit old man Silas had been buried in. But where a living man should be, there was only a shifting, dark gray mist that seemed to suck the moonlight right out of the room. The face was a hollow blur beneath the brim of a black felt hat. The spirit reached out a long, semi-transparent hand, its fingers brushing the surface of the dresser, hovering just above the $2 silver. A low, vibrating hum filled the room, rattling the rotted window frames. Not a voice spoken with a tongue, but a sound that echoed directly inside Toby's skull. "The toll must be paid, boy. The river is wide, and the ferryman waits for no thief." The phantom fingers picked up the first coin. The metal vanished into the mist of the hand with a faint, resonant chime. Then it picked up the second. Silence rushed back into the room, heavy and absolute, apart from the crackle of a dying log in the fireplace. The crushing weight on the floor lifted. The smell of the damp earth and peppermint faded, replaced once more by the familiar scent of cedar and pine. Toby lay frozen scared for hours, until the first streaks of dawn began to bleed over the eastern ridge. When he finally dared to throw off the quilt and creep across the floor, the dresser top was entirely bare. The silver was gone. Down in the hollow, old man Silas was finally crossing the river.